Um, let's start with a scenario that I think is, well, it's going to painfully resonate with a lot of us.
Oh, I think I know the one.
Right. So you spend years in a classroom, you are the star student, you memorize the conjugation tables,
I
you
absolutely ace the vocabulary quizzes.
exactly. You know the strict difference between the past perfect and the past continuous, and, on paper, you are fluent.
Yeah, on paper being the really operative phrase there.
Right. Because then you finally take that trip, you walk into a cafe in Paris or Tokyo or wherever, and you go to order a coffee, literally just a coffee. And what happens?
You freeze.
Complete freeze. Your brain goes completely blank. The barista is staring at you. The line behind you is getting super impatient. And you just realize, I can't actually speak this language.
It's the universal nightmare. It's that
Oh,
classic, I know the rules, but I completely forgot how to play the game problem.
yes, exactly. And that is exactly what we are unpacking today. We've got a massive stack of research for this deep dive.
A really big stack.
Yeah, everything from Stephen Krashen's foundational work on second language acquisition
Sure.
to more modern guides on things like shadowing and deliberate practice. And the mission for this deep dive is to figure out why traditional learning totally fails us when it's time to speak and how to actually hack the brain to fix it.
Because we are essentially trying to move you from being a student of the language to an actual user of the language. And the science shows that those are two completely different neurological processes.
So let's get right into the meat of this. The first big concept from the sources comes from Stephen Krashen, and he draws this really hard line between acquisition and learning. Now, to me, those just sound like synonyms. I
Yeah.
mean, if I'm acquiring French, I'm learning French, right?
You would definitely think so.
Yeah.
But Krashen argues they are entirely separate systems in the brain. So learning is what you did in high school. It's highly conscious, it's knowing the rules,
Okay.
it's being able to explicitly explain why a verb changes its ending.
Yep.
It's sort of like, well, it's like studying the schematics of a car engine.
Okay, so I know exactly how the pistons fire, but I still can't drive the car to the store.
Precisely. Now, acquisition, on the other hand, is subconscious. It's what happens when you're a toddler. You don't know what a preposition is.
But you know how to use one.
Exactly.
Mm.
When you speak your native language, you aren't actively thinking about sentence structure. You just have a feel for it. If you say something wrong, it just sounds off, even if you can't explicitly explain the grammar rule you just broke.
Okay, but here is where I get a bit stuck. If I have that learned knowledge, if I spent 4 grueling years memorizing those rules, can't I just use that conscious knowledge to speak? Why does it fall apart at the coffee shop?
Ah, because of the monitor.
The monitor.
Yeah. Think of the monitor as this over-anxious internal editor. It's a little voice in your head that lives exclusively in the learning system.
Oh, I know that voice.
We all do. Before you even open your mouth, the monitor scans your proposed sentence, checks the grammar rules, looks for errors, and tries to furiously polish the output.
Which sounds, that sounds helpful. I definitely don't want to sound like a caveman.
It is helpful if you are writing an email
Oh, great.
because you have time to delete, rewrite, check a dictionary. But in a spoken real-time conversation, you just don't have time.
Yeah, the barista doesn't want to wait for me to mentally check my verb tables.
Exactly. If you are relying on the monitor, you are pausing constantly to check your mental rulebook. You stumble. You hesitate. By the time you've successfully conjugated the verb in your head, the conversation has completely moved on.
That is exactly the sensation. It's total paralysis by analysis. I'm so worried about using the subjunctive mood that I totally forget to just say hello.
You are monitoring rather than acquiring. And the goal of what we're talking about today is to help you totally bypass that editor so you can just jump in and drive the car.
Okay, so if we want to essentially shut up the monitor and actually acquire the language, the research points to one main driver, the input hypothesis. Or, if you prefer the mathematical version, I plus order 1.
Yes. This is essentially the holy grail of second language acquisition research.
So break that down for us. What is the dollar and why on earth do we need to add 1 to it?
The dollars is your current level of comprehension. The plus $1 is language that is just slightly beyond your current ability.
Just a little bit harder.
Right. And the theory is that we acquire language in only one way, by understanding messages, what they call comprehensible input, that contain that dollar plus dollars.
Wait, so you're saying we don't learn the grammar rules first and then use them to understand the language?
No, absolutely not. That's the skill-building hypothesis, and the research strongly suggests it's backwards. We understand the message first.
By using context and stuff.
Yeah, using context, body language, the situation you're in. And because we understood the core message, our brain subconsciously reverse engineers the grammar.
Wow. So I'm just focusing on the story or the news report or whatever I'm listening to, and the grammar's just kind of hitching a ride.
It's hitching a ride and permanently setting up camp in your brain without you even realizing it. If you get enough input at that plus 11.1 level, the grammar rules just sort themselves out naturally. You stop thinking subject, verb, object, and you just start thinking directly in meaning.
That sounds incredible, but there has to be a catch. Because I know people, I'm sure you do too, who have lived in foreign countries for years, fully surrounded by input, and they still can't really speak.
That is the catch, yes. You can be absolutely swimming in input, but if your brain is in defense mode, none of it gets in. This is what the research literature calls the affective filter.
The affective filter. It sounds like a sci-fi force field.
It effectively is a force field. Think of it as a literal gate between your ears and your brain's language center. If you're anxious or bored or stressed or feeling super self-conscious, the gate slams shut.
Oh man, this explains literally every high school Spanish class I ever took.
Right.
The teacher calls on you randomly, your heart starts violently pounding, and suddenly you can't remember your own name, let alone the word for library.
And in that state of panic, you could listen to the most perfect, comprehensible Spanish in the world, and it would just bounce right off. It doesn't reach the language acquisition device at all. High anxiety just fundamentally kills acquisition.
So all those teachers who force us to speak on day one, correcting every single mistake in front of the whole class, they were actually making it physically harder for us to learn.
They were severely raising the filter, yes. It's actually pretty tragic when you look at how children naturally learn. Kids have what's called a silent period.
A silent period.
Yeah. They listen for months, sometimes a full year, before they even start putting basic sentences together. They're quietly building competence in a completely low-stress environment.
And we totally deny that to adults. We just say, speak right now, perform for the class.
Right. And that immense performance anxiety completely blocks the input. The sources we looked at heavily emphasize that you have to lower the stakes. You need to be relaxed. You need to actually be genuinely interested in what you're hearing or reading.
Okay, so we need low stress, and we need this comprehensible input, the 1 plus 11 molars. But practically speaking, where do we get it? Because I can't afford to hire a native speaker to just follow me around all day and talk to me like I'm a toddler.
You don't need to. This is where reading strategies come in. And I don't mean reading dry glamour textbooks. The sources clearly distinguish between two entirely different modes of reading: intensive reading and extensive reading.
I really loved the visual the source gave for this. They said intensive reading is like being a linguistic detective.
Yes, that's a perfect analogy. This is what you're probably most used to from school. You take a short, really difficult text, maybe a dense news article or a complex essay, and you completely dissect it.
You're looking up every third word in the dictionary.
Exactly. You're painstakingly analyzing why the sentence structure is inverted in paragraph 2. You are basically squeezing the text dry for information.
It's a serious workout. It's honestly kind of painful.
It is exhausting. And it does have a place. It's great for consciously adding specific structural tools to your toolbox. But you can't do it for very long, and it totally kills the natural flow of reading. To actually build that subconscious gut feeling for the language, you need the other mode: extensive reading.
Right, the marathon versus the sprint.
Exactly. Extensive reading is about reading large amounts of material that is easy. And I mean, genuinely easy.
But doesn't that feel, I don't know, kind of like cheating? If I'm reading something and I'm not constantly looking up words, am I actually learning anything? It just feels like I'm coasting.
But that coasting state is exactly where the magic happens. The source mentions a very specific, crucial statistic for this: the 98% rule.
The 98% rule.
Right, to read extensively, to actually get into a flow state where you aren't mentally translating everything back into English in your head, you need to already know 95% to 98% of the words on the page.
Wow, that is a wildly high percentage. That means in a normal paragraph, there's maybe, one single word I don't know?
Pretty much. And because you confidently know everything else around it, your brain can just naturally guess that one unknown word from context almost instantly. You don't have to stop. You keep the story moving.
And that actually works.
It works beautifully. By seeing that new word in context 10 different times across a chapter, you acquire it entirely naturally, without flashcards.
Okay, so intensive reading gives you the explicit, conscious knowledge, but extensive reading simple novels, or those graded readers, is what actually automates that knowledge in your brain.
Yes. It builds the subconscious neural pathways.
Mm.
It turns the exhausting process of decoding into actual fluid reading.
Okay, so let's say we've successfully hacked the input side of things. We're reading easy books, we're listening to fun podcasts, we're keeping the anxiety and the filter super low. We genuinely understand everything, but there's still a massive gap between understanding something and actually opening your mouth to speak.
There is.
I mean, I can read a Shakespeare play, but that absolutely does not mean I can get on stage and act it out.
And this is exactly where so many self-taught learners hit a frustrating wall. They have incredible passive understanding, but their mouth just won't physically cooperate. It just feels clumsy.
Because it's an actual physical problem, isn't it? It's not just a mental block anymore.
It is a completely physical problem. Speaking a foreign language is basically an athletic event for the muscles in your face and mouth. You have spent decades moving your tongue, your jaw, and your lips in a very specific, highly ingrained way for English.
Right.
Suddenly, you need to confidently produce a French R from the back of your throat, or perfectly hit a Mandarin tone. Your physical muscles literally do not have the muscle memory for it yet.
So how do we go to the gym for our tongue? The sources heavily suggest a technique called shadowing.
Shadowing, yes. It's an incredibly powerful technique that bridges that gap between just listening and actually doing. It basically involves listening to a native speaker and speaking aloud right along with them, either simultaneously or just a split second behind them, literally acting like their shadow.
But it's not just repeating the words, right? Because we all did that repeat after me stuff in middle school. The cat is on the table, the cat is on the table. That certainly didn't help me become fluent.
No, because that was entirely focused on just outputting the bare words. Shadowing is different. It focuses on prosody,
Prosody.
the music of the language, the specific rhythm, the rising and falling pitch, the raw emotion, the exact places they pause to breathe. You aren't just dryly copying the text, you are fully copying the performance.
The source had a really fascinating tip on this specific point. Pick an avatar.
This is a crucial step. You need to pick one specific person whose voice, accent, and style you really admire. Maybe it's a famous actor, a podcast host, or news anchor. And when you shadow them, don't just try to speak their language. Try to literally be them.
So if I pick, say, Steve Carell as my avatar, I'm not just speaking English, I'm actively acting out the role of Steve Carell.
Exactly.
Right.
And I know it sounds a little silly, but it's a brilliant psychological hack. When you try to speak French, your brain instantly gets self-conscious. The monitor kicks right in and freezes you up.
Because I'm judging myself.
Right. But if you are just playing a character, you completely lower your inhibitions. You naturally adopt their body language, their confidence, their exact intonation. You effectively trick your brain into comfortably stepping out of its comfort zone.
There is one specific step in the shadowing protocol that sounds absolutely brutal to me, though. The recording phase.
Oh, yes. It is deeply humbling.
I mean, I hate hearing my own voice on a normal voicemail. Now you want me to record myself trying to theatrically sound like a French movie star and voluntarily listen to it back?
You absolutely have to. It's the only reliable way to get objective feedback on your performance. You listen to the native speaker's audio, and then you immediately listen to your recording. And yes, you will cringe. You'll clearly hear that your rhythm is totally flat, or that you're rushing the vowel sounds.
But that cringe is the actual learning happening, isn't it?
That cringe is you successfully noticing the gap. It's your brain objectively realizing, oh, I thought I sounded exactly like that, but I actually sound like this.
Yeah.
You simply can't fix an error that you can't actively hear.
It's brutal, but obviously efficient. Now, speaking of efficiency, I really want to talk about the intermediate plateau.
Ah, the plateau.
This is essentially where I live. I can successfully order the coffee, I can have a basic chat about the weather, but I just never seem to get any noticeably better. I keep making the exact same grammatical mistakes over and over again.
This is the massive danger of unfocused practice. You're out there chatting, which is great and fun, but you're highly likely just reinforcing your existing bad habits. You're basically getting really, really fluent at being wrong.
Ouch. That hurts because it's true. So how do we actually break out of that cycle?
You need to consciously shift to deliberate practice. And this connects perfectly to the output hypothesis by Meryl Swain. She argued that while input is absolutely fantastic for building general understanding, output, actually speaking or writing, is what forces you to sharply identify what you don't know.
It's that awful feeling of actively reaching into your brain for a word and just grabbing empty air.
Yes, and that specific moment of extreme frustration, that is incredibly high value. When you're mid-sentence and you suddenly realize, oh no, I don't actually know the word for screwdriver, your brain immediately puts a high priority bounty on that specific word.
So it primes you.
Exactly. The very next time you happen to hear it in your reading or listening input, it sticks almost instantly because your brain was actively looking for it.
So we use output to violently find the holes in our knowledge, and we use input to smoothly fill them back in.
Precisely. And for those really stubborn, persistent grammar mistakes, like constantly dropping the is at the very end of a plural verb, you need to drill them deliberately. Don't just go out and casually chat for an hour. Sit down and spend 20 minutes focusing only on perfectly hitting that final is sound. Record it, listen to it, heavily correct it, and repeat.
So it's heavily prioritizing quality over quantity.
Every single time.
Okay, we have to touch on one last piece of the learner's stack today because it deals with the ultimate enemy of all learning, memory, or more accurately, forgetting.
The forgetting curve, first mapped out by Hermann Ebbinghaus. It's a terrifyingly steep slope. You confidently learn a new word today, and without any active review, it's mostly just gone from your brain by next week.
And the old school way we all tried to fight this was with flashcards, just massive, unorganized shoeboxes full of paper flashcards.
Which is incredibly boring and vastly inefficient. Today, we can easily hack that curve with spaced repetition systems, commonly known as SRS. These are software apps like Anki. They essentially use a smart algorithm to predict exactly the moment you are about to completely forget a word.
It's honestly like it reads your mind. It's like, oh, you haven't seen the word epiphany in 4 straight days. You're just about to lose it forever, so here it is.
It perfectly creates a leaky bucket patch. Instead of wasting time reviewing words you already know perfectly, which is what physical flashcards often make you do, you only spend time reviewing the specific words that are actively slipping away from your memory. It makes raw vocabulary acquisition roughly 1.5 to 2 times faster.
That is a massive efficiency gain.
Yeah.
So let's try to pull this all together for the listener. We've covered a ton of ground today, and I want to make sure you walk away with a really clear, actionable stack. If I'm completely done with traditional classes and I want to build a daily routine actually based on science, what does it look like?
It all starts with your mindset. You absolutely need to prioritize comprehensible input. Stop trying to formally study grammar rules and start actively trying to consume meaningful messages. Read easy, fun books. Listen to podcasts you genuinely enjoy. Keep the anxiety and affective filter as low as possible.
Right. If you're feeling stressed, just stop. You aren't acquiring anything anyway.
Exactly. Then thoughtfully balance your reading. Do a little bit of intensive detective work to occasionally learn new complex structures, but spend the vast majority of your time in extensive flow reading to subconsciously automate those structures.
And for the physical athletic side of speaking.
Shadowing. It's gym class for your mouth. Pick an avatar you love, vividly mimic their music and prosody, and ruthlessly record yourself to catch the physical errors.
And then when you inevitably hit that frustrating intermediate plateau,
Shift to deliberate practice. Find the specific, glaring holes in your game through output and drill them. And consistently use an SRS app like Anki to keep your hard-earned vocabulary from leaking out of your brain.
you know, as we deeply talk through all this, I realized that my personal failure in languages wasn't actually a failure of intelligence at all. It was purely a failure of method. I was stubbornly trying to learn a fluid skill like it was just a static set of historical facts.
That's the critical distinction. You can enthusiastically study the intricate aerodynamics of a bicycle all day long, but that absolutely won't teach you how to actually physically ride it. You have to eventually get on the bike. And yes, you will inevitably scrape your knees a few times.
And that leads perfectly to the final so what of this deep dive. The sources really heavily talk about the stark difference between intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. We almost always start with extrinsic. I want a good grade on this test, or I really want to impress my boss at the meeting.
But that specific type of fuel runs out very quickly. The truly successful learners, the ones who actually make it all the way to effortless fluency, are the ones who find deep intrinsic value. They simply don't study English. They use English to do things they already desperately love doing.
This is the ultimate biohack that isn't really a hack at all. It's just smart lifestyle design.
Exactly. If you passionately love cooking, immediately stop buying dry language textbooks. Watch MasterChef entirely in English. Read complex recipes in English. If you love video games, switch the audio and text and play them entirely in English.
The language completely stops being the final destination and suddenly starts just being the vehicle to get you what you want.
And when you are highly focused on the content itself, when you really truly want to know how to bake that specific cake or beat that incredibly hard boss level, The effective filter totally drops. You completely forget you're even learning. And that is exactly when the rich input finally gets deep into your brain.
It's honestly funny. We spend so much grueling time trying to master the language in a classroom so we can finally feel ready to go out and use it. But the actual research says we have it entirely backwards. You have to actively use it in order to ever master it.
You have to willingly tolerate the messiness of the real world. You
Yeah.
have to be totally willing to sound a little foolish, to frequently misunderstand things, to bravely guess and be totally wrong.
So here is a final provocative thought to leave you with today. Stop studying, seriously. Just put the grammar workbook down right now. Ask yourself, what is the one thing I love doing most in my free time? Now go do that exact thing, but do it exclusively in your target language. You definitely might not understand every single word at first, and that's perfectly okay, but you'll be genuinely acquiring. And much more importantly, you won't be bored out of your mind.
And that ultimately is exactly how you win the game.
Thanks for jumping into this deep dive with us. Now go find your Steve Carell avatar and just start shadowing. We'll see you next time.